Welcome to the Urban Farmer Rewind. In each episode, I'll be joined by a farmer or guest to talk about what we heard on this week's episode of the Urban Farmer. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Now, let's jump right into it. It's the Urban Farmer Rewind. What if I told you that a single 50-foot bed of kale could bring in over $1,000 of revenue in a season? Or 1/3 of your farm's income could come from salad mix and other greens? Today, we'll explore how greens can become an economic driver for small-scale farms on the Urban Farmer Rewind. I'm Diego, D-I-E-G-O, and I talk about profitable small-scale farming on Modern Grower. Today, we're doing a deep dive into what was episode 12 of The Urban Farmer that I recorded with Curtis Stone 10 years ago. And at the time, greens were a powerful driver of the economics of Curtis's farm. And I think they are today for a lot of farms out there. I've talked to enough growers to realize that this is really true. Why is that? It's one crop that I think can realistically distinguish you from a commodity. If customers are buying from a grocery store, if restaurants are buying from a distributor, oftentimes the greens are subpar. Onions are onions, carrots are carrots. I don't want to say tomatoes are tomatoes, but they possibly could be. But greens are often different. They don't last as long. They don't transport as well. They don't stay as fresh as ones grown locally and sold shortly after harvest compared to these things that are trucked and trucked. So that's why so many small farms work off greens. They're also universally recognizable. They're consumed year-round. They're not really seasonal, and they cover a broad swath. You have braising greens, which are less common, all the way up through salad mix. And there's all sorts of uses from greens, from juicing them to putting them in other dishes to using them in salads. And you can eat them raw with no preparation, which makes it really easy and convenient for people that are lazy and modern like me who don't want to deal with fancy cooking. I just want to take stuff out of the bag and eat it as it is. I don't want to wash it. I don't want to cook it. Just give it to me like that. So for farms growing greens, this really works. If you look at your farm, what crops are the big economic drivers? It's probably salad mix, tomatoes, microgreens if you do that, over some of the more exotic crops like broccoli and green beans and things like that. Curtis was big on the 80-20 rule. 20% of the crops contributed 80% of the value to his farm. So when you look at your top crops, how much of your revenue is generated by those top crops? And that Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, probably plays out for your farm. Now let's take a look at why greens are such an economic driver. One is revenue. Salad mix counts for a huge slice of revenue on a lot of farms, a third or more. It's a high-value crop that has consistent turnover year-round, for the most part, and consistent demand year-round, for the most part. And along with that consistent turnover, you can usually command high prices. A lot of salad mixes are going from $8 to $12 a pound, maybe higher, depending on where you're located and what time of year you're selling and how many other people are selling against you. But that's a nice net to bring in. Commodity prices of a lot of vegetables are like $3 a pound. So figure you're selling salad mix for $12, you're 4x the average for a lot of vegetable commodities. For something that is relatively easy to grow, I know that's a slippery slope. I've done a whole series with Ray Tyler on just lettuce growing. It takes experience to grow it consistently and well, but it's not a crazy hard crop to grow. And I think a lot of growers would echo this. You do have to learn how it works in your system, in your climate. Once you figure it out, I don't want to say it's set it and forget it, but you've learned it. There's a lot of advantages to lettuce, as I spoke about earlier. It's got extended shelf life. Customers love that. You can sell it to them and it'll usually outlast the competition, which means chefs want to buy from you, which means customers at a market want to buy from you compared to what they can get at the store that just gets wet and slimy in their fridge and they end up wasting it. That's often a huge advantage that I've heard from grower after grower after grower about why chefs buy from them. Shelf life. Shelf life matters because it reduces waste, which means every dollar you spend as a customer is utilized in a raw material that you can turn into a finished product. When I'm wasting it, I'm wasting money. Locally grown greens often have superior color, texture, flavor, and freshness. The great thing about salad mixes is they're universal. You can put whatever in them, a little bit of lettuce, a little bit of spinach, a little bit of microgreens. So you can play around with the flavor profile. You can play around with the color profile, the texture. It can help balance out your crop planning by doing this. It can keep things fresh and interesting. So it's not the same mescaline mix every week. That is a big benefit as a farmer. Compared to revenue per square foot, greens are going to blow away a lot of other crops, green beans, broccoli, kohlrabi, that type of thing. That's why so many farmers grow them. I think a lot of farmers would love to grow just lettuce. The problem is they can't sell enough of it. There's a lot of labor efficiency in greens production. If you're direct seeding, you can use the Jang to do it. Direct seeding is super easy, low cost. You can harvest those crops with the quick cut greens harvester, which makes things really easy. Get that from Farmer's Friend. If you're planting something like Salanova, that can be done with the paper pot transplanter. He can do it in the landscape fabric. Outside of hand transplanting, greens production's usually really efficient. Now, Salanova, you do have to hand harvest with a knife, so that's a little bit of a trade-off there, but that $12 a pound takes care of it. I mean, like Don Draper said, that's what the money's for. Hand transplanting and hand harvesting. That's why you're charging $12 a pound for it. One of the more interesting things that I've learned over the years is there are two systems that people use when it comes to greens. There's a cut and come again approach, and there's a one and done approach. Certain crops like kale are semi-perennial. You can plant them and harvest from the same plant, pulling off the bottom leaves as the plant grows until weather, disease pressure, pest pressure, or market changes just make you pull the crop. So kale, you might get weeks and weeks and weeks out of a single planting of kale just by harvesting it. And this isn't baby leaf kale. This is the more upright grown, like lacinato, dinosaur kale. So that's an obvious cut and come again. But there are crops they go both ways. And it seems like from the people I talk to, it's divided right down the middle. When it comes to something like Salanova. When I was doing the series with Curtis, there was a lot of talk of multiple cuttings. You know, he was getting 3 to 4 cuttings from lettuce at the time. And if you think about it, that's pretty cool. You can plant it once, cut it, let it regrow, cut it, and repeat the process several times. So one amount of effort went into doing that transplanting, and for every transplanting effort unit that you exerted, you got several cuts. Now, the return on those cuts, I think, often goes down. Your first cut is usually the best cut in terms of look, flavor, taste, and the volume of product that you've harvested. And subsequent cuts, everything kind of depletes down. That seems to be what I hear from a lot of growers. So if you got 100 units on cut 1, cut 2 might be 90, then maybe you're 70, then maybe you're 50, making those numbers up. And it doesn't work well at all times of year and in all climate conditions, depending on how much rain and things like that you're getting. So some growers will do that. They'll maximize the transplanting effort by doing multiple cuts. Other growers say, not worth it. It's a waste of time. And the subsequent yields that you get from secondary, tertiary, and I don't know, whatever the fourth one is, quaternary, making that up, harvest, it's not worth it. So a lot of farmers, people I've talked to like Eric Schultz, plant it once, harvest it, we're done. And I'd say again, about half the farmers that I've talked to, they like to do the cut and come again approach. And half of them, one cut, that's it, restart. So if you're a newer grower, this is something to really think about and try and play around with. It sounds great to say, let's cut and cut and cut, but are the results of those additional cuttings worth it? And you could easily do side-by-side trials of, this is a bed that I cut, and I start tracking the data. What are my yields on subsequent cuts? Is the leaf size good? Is the flavor good? Is the shape good? How much time is between these cuts compared to just one cut, replant, one cut? If you're doing strategic replanting, where you have the plugs ready to go, you can harvest the bed, put the new plugs in, and you're on your growing cycle right away. So this is something to think about. With some of the multi-cut strategies that Curtis was using at the time, he was getting red Russian kale up to 8 cuts, 12 pounds per cut on a 50-foot bed, arugula, 4 to 5 cuts in the spring, 2 in the summer. So there are some seasonal differences as things get hotter, want to bolt quicker. Lettuce, 3 to 4 cuts, mustard greens, 5 to 6 cuts in the spring, tatsoi, 5 to 6 cuts, a spinach. He would have to alter his approach. Different approaches for the first cut and subsequent cuts just because of different growth patterns. So consideration has to happen here. There's no one answer fits all. Another thing to think about is leaf size. Now, Salanova has solved a lot of this for lettuce because the great thing about Salanova is that it forms a head, or a cluster is maybe a better term for it, a cluster of leaves. Because as a Salanova head grows, the leaves don't just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It puts out more leaves, and the leaves are generally all about the same size. You have to look at when you're cutting based on market demands. And what's the type of product you're trying to sell? What does the customer want? What are you trying to push? Baby leaf spinach can easily be used in a salad. You let it grow to be a huge leaf that's as big as your hand, that's a different story. Now you're into something that has to be cut, or it's used in juices, or it's in cooking. You're not just going to put that whole leaf in a salad. And if you expect a customer to do that, it's another step that in a society that's looking to have things made easier and easier, they don't want to do. So if you're selling me spinach for salad, you harvest the leaf at salad size. Don't give me a big leaf and tell me I got to cut it down to size. Sounds easy, but that's the type of convenience that I think customers today really want. Restaurants, they might specify a specific thing. Baby leaves go to salad, bigger leaves go to cooking. Some takeaways from this. When you think about optimum size, you're going to want to take a lot of notes here. Where is spinach at different times of year? Like how big does that leaf have to be? How long is it going to take to get there? If I plant it in March, what's the days to maturity for that specific leaf size compared to if I plant it in late May? If I'm doing multiple cuts of lettuce, there's all sorts of data to keep track of here. How much am I getting in terms of yield from subsequent cuts? When am I able to do a second cut? How is that changing throughout the year? When we started recording the show 10 years ago, it was interesting because Salanova was a new thing. I think Johnny's had debuted it around 2013, somewhere in that range. And it was interesting because at the time, they still sold a core type. They probably still do, where you literally cut the whole head off, and they sold a tool to remove the core. I don't even think they put that in the catalog anymore. It's now just the Salanova that produces all the baby leaves. So that's how things have changed over the 10 years with the rise of Salanova. It's just made a superior quality lettuce with uniform leaf sizes, with great flavor, great performance in terms of growing year round. They have more colors, more leaf shapes than they've ever had. It's the industry standard. If you're buying lettuce mix from Costco or a restaurant's buying it from a distributor, they are most likely growing Salanova in that mix, given a specific time of year when they can actually grow it well. With more varieties out there than ever, it enables you to really get fancy in terms of your mixes, which helps keep customers engaged. Look at what the big brands do. Look at what Target and McDonald's and Domino's, they're always introducing new flavors, new dishes to keep people from getting bored. If you bring the same product week in and week out, yes, some people will love it, but some people will tire of it. Not everybody wants to eat the exact same thing all year round. The great thing about salad mix is it's this amorphous thing. It's an umbrella term that captures lettuce that can be eaten as a salad, or greens, I should say, that can be eaten as a salad. It doesn't have to be just lettuce. You can put whatever in it, and it's a mix. So there's no set ratio or recipe. Now, this would be a little different if you had a customer, like a restaurant that specifically wanted a certain type of mix. Obviously, you'd have to adhere to that. But when you sell direct to consumer through a CSA or a farmer's market, this mix is really at your discretion, and it's what gives you an awesome amount of flexibility as a farmer, because you can bend and flex that mix based upon what's overproducing and what's underproducing. And every week throughout the year, you can optimize it based on what you can grow. Jackie Hinchy's talked about this. Jody Roebuck's talked a lot about this, how they are using a lot of different crops to make a unique mix. Jody grows microgreens. He blends in different amounts of microgreens in with lettuce and other greens to make his salad mix. The great thing about microgreens is he can grow them year round with very predictable yields in indoor conditions, and they can often fill the gaps from outdoor crops or field crops that can be subjected to different weather factors. Jackie Hinchy, with a really fancy salad, branded her whole farm around that. Customers suggested the idea, they loved it. She took a basic salad mix and upgraded it by adding microgreens and edible flowers, and that made her mix unique. So you could do that with your farm. Why sell the same thing that everybody else is selling? When I look around farmers markets that I go to, there's a lot of people selling lettuce. Lettuce is lettuce, but if your mix is unique to your farm, or you create some branded lettuce mix by putting things like marigold petals or whatever in it, it stands out, it's different, and it becomes known to you. People might perceive it to be more premium, even if it's not. So you can use all sorts of mixes to work in your favor. You can have seasonal mixes like braising mixes that you can early in the season for greens that grow better in the winter. That's tatsoi, mustard greens, arugula, kales. You can have a standard salad mix of lettuce and specialty greens. Throw herbs in there, throw edible flowers in there, and all sorts of premium positions available in the marketplace through these types of combinations. So I'd encourage you to think about your salad mix. If you haven't put a lot of thought into this, are you doing anything special with it? Is it just lettuce and you harvest it and it's salad mix? And hey, one thing, if it's working and customers love it, great. Don't mess with it. But if it's just kind of meh, well, maybe you're putting a meh effort into the product. Not in terms of growing it, but in terms of marketing it. What can you do to jazz it up, to bring some excitement into it? Are there other things on the farm that you can add into it to increase the flavor, change the color, change the texture of the mix, and really start to have yourself stand apart from other people in your market, because that's one other thing you should be doing. Look around. If you're selling the exact same stuff as everybody else, why should someone buy from you? There's some customer loyalty there, but for new customers, they want to see something unique and different. Now, to have good quality greens, one thing that's critically important are harvest procedures and post-harvest procedures. We talked a lot about this in the Urban Farmer series of ensuring that all the work that you put into growing that crop was maintained in the harvest and post-harvest process. Have sharp tools so when you harvest the crop, you can cut it cleanly. This eliminates bruising and browning at the stems. You put the greens in water to remove a lot of the field heat, to cool them down, and then put them into a refrigerator to keep them nice and fresh. Now, this is one area where there can be a divide, because everybody's got to harvest greens, but not everybody has to wash greens. So you have to decide, is it worth it to wash them or not? And the ultimate decision maker for that is really your customer base. Do they want it to be washed? If they do, then you have to. If they don't want it to be washed, then don't wash it, because that saves you a lot of time and labor, which is money. Now, if you're not going to wash it, you have to make sure you're selling a product that doesn't have to be washed, meaning it's clean, it's not dirty, there's not bugs in it, something that you would be confident eating and not worrying about chewing it and thinking, oh, what's all that grit in my mouth? Ray Tyler's talked about this on some of the podcasts that we've done, and in the Lettuce Grower series about how he got away from washing greens. They were able to grow the greens and keep them really clean, grow them without pests, and he removed wash. He doesn't advertise them as washed. He just says, please wash this. So there's no false advertising going on here, but it saves him a big step. Michael Bell at Dallas Half Acre Farm, he doesn't wash his greens. He doesn't refrigerate his greens. He harvests and delivers right away. That saves a lot of steps. He can only do that, Ray can only do that, because their greens are in a position to be sold that way. If you have dirty greens, just like if you have dirty drawers, you got to wash them. But washing does bring the benefits. Besides just removing the debris, removing bugs from the greens, you're going to cool them off. There's something field heat. Greens are out in the field when you harvest them. They pick up heat in the summer. When you soak them in water, a lot of that heat instantly comes out of the leaves, cools them down, which helps maintain freshness. You're going to want to make sure you get those greens really dry, because if there's water in the bag when you bag them, that's how you end up reducing shelf life. Dry greens last a long time. Wet greens go bad quickly and you have unhappy customers. Make sure you have adequate refrigerator space. If you're doing a lot of greens, make sure you really optimize your bagging process, meaning if you're selling wholesale, figure out what size bag they want. There's no sense putting stuff into a million tiny little bags if they're fine with you just putting it into one big tote. If you want to learn more about growing great lettuce, be sure to check out the Ray Tyler lettuce series that I have on YouTube and on the podcast. That's a 10-part series where Ray talks all about his experience growing lettuce organically. If you can master greens and you can build a market for them, they will reward you by bringing a lot of cash flow into your farm. It's a crop that everyone recognizes, everyone loves. It can be grown almost all year round in most places. It usually commands a really high dollar per pound value. You can grow at high density, which is exactly what we want on small farms. You can do a lot of crop rotations and successions per year, which is what we want. It checks all the boxes. So if you're struggling on your farm by not having enough cash flow, by not being profitable enough, look at greens. How well are they doing? There are some markets where it doesn't work. And I've had growers from places in the South who say, hey, people don't eat salad down here. So this isn't going to work everywhere, but in most places it works. And then think about this same strategy for all of your top crops, your top 3, your top 5. Focus on those, make those unique, master those, and don't worry about the other 80%. Let me know what you think about this episode, this type of content in the comments below. Be sure to check out future episodes of The Urban Farmer and The Urban Farmer Rewind right here on YouTube or on the podcast channel, The Urban Farmer. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work. Thanks for watching this episode of the Urban Farmer Rewind. If you're a farmer and you'd like to join me as a guest for a future episode of the Rewind, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have you on and talk shop. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.